There's only one path to achieve a just peace for Ukraine and for Europe. We must continue to empower Ukraine's resistance with political, financial and military support. Last month in Kyiv, I announced that we will provide up to 35 billion euros in loans to Ukraine as part of the $50 billion pledged by the G7. This loan will be repaid by the windfall profits of immobilized Russian assets, and it will flow directly into Ukraine's national budget. So, we are making Russia pay for the damage it caused, and we will stand with Ukraine through this winter and for as long as it takes.
It is, of course, essential to address Ukraine's financial needs. There should be no mistake. Belgium fully supports this. There is no place for any doubt. But there are different options to do so. We have repeatedly said that we consider the option of the reparations loan the worst of all.
But we hear, for example, today there was a statement from the International Monetary Fund where they speak about this topic very, very cautiously and call for such steps not to have any negative impact on the international financial system. So even the IMF. And what is the IMF? It's something they created. It's the foundation of monetary policy of the monetary world. And now it turns out that this very foundation is speaking out against its own creators and saying, come to your senses. It's a phenomenal situation. This hasn't happened in a long time.
Everyone can see how difficult it has been for months to find a robust solution to the proposed option. This explains why we keep on pleading for an alternative, namely the EU borrowing the amounts needed on the markets. It is a well-known, a robust and a well-established option with predictable parameters.
This is about Russian immobilized assets in Europe. It is a new weapon that could significantly shift the war in Ukraine or change it overnight. It's not a new missile. It's not a secret tank. It's $300 billion, Russian state money, frozen in Western banks under Western jurisdiction the day the war began. The logic seems simple. Russia destroys Ukraine. Russia pays to rebuild it, take its money, fund the weapons, change the war. But it hasn't happened because the West is trying to extract value without ever crossing the ultimate line. Because in the high-stakes game of global power, some weapons are considered too dangerous to ever use. This is the veto you never heard. The story of how system preservation overrules wartime urgency, and the billion-dollar lesson it teaches the rest of the world. When Russia declared war on Ukraine, the West did something unprecedented. It didn't just sanction oligarchs. It froze the central bank reserves of a G20 nation. Roughly $300 billion vanished from Moscow's reach, mostly held in the European Union, in places like the Belgian clearinghouse Euroclear. Instantly, a question arose. What do we do with it? For Ukraine's allies in Eastern Europe, Poland, the Baltics, the answer was obvious. Use it. Turn Putin's war chest against him. Use the interest, the profits, anything, to buy weapons for Kyiv. For them, this is an existential fight. Every day of delay costs Ukrainian lives. Every hesitation brings Russian victory closer. But from Washington and from the financial capitals of Western Europe came a different calculus. A quiet, powerful alliance of caution. The United States, architect of the global financial order, joined forces with risk-averse EU states and liability-fearing custodians like Belgium. Together, they formed a de facto coalition of financial conservatism. And suddenly, the world's most powerful alliance was divided not by principle, but by priority. So why would the West block its own weapon? To understand, you have to understand what this money really represents. It's not just cash. It is the cornerstone of trust in the entire Western-led financial system. For decades, countries like China, India, Saudi Arabia have kept their savings in US dollars and euros. They trust that their money in a New York or Brussels bank is safe, neutral, and beyond politics. But here's the reality check. The West sells neutrality, but keeps the master key. Freezing Russian assets was a shock, but seizing them, turning them into weapons, crosses a Rubicon. It turns the banking system from a neutral vault into a battlefield. And the fear is threefold. First, retaliation. If we can seize Russian reserves, what stops China from seizing Apple's factories in Shanghai if it invades Taiwan? What stops any nation from grabbing whatever Western assets are within its reach? Second, and most crucially, flight. If you're the finance minister of Indonesia or Brazil watching this, you get one message. Your reserves are not safe. Your sovereign wealth, your national insurance policy can be taken if you fall out of favor with Washington. The response wouldn't be to attack. It would be to quietly, slowly move your money somewhere else. To gold, UN, alternative currencies, and regional arrangements outside Western reach. That shift accelerates incentives to diversify away from dollar and euro exposure at the core of American financial power. This cloud initiates the slow death of dollar dominance, the core of American global power. Third, legal chaos. Banks like Euroclear in Belgium would drown in lawsuits for decades. The rules-based order shows its real rule. Protect the system first. Now, here's where the architecture becomes clear. The West is carefully separating the frozen money into three baskets. Basket A, the immobilized principal, the $300 billion itself, politically and legally radioactive. Basket B, the windfall profits and interest generated while frozen, maybe usable but debated. Basket C, loans backed by the assets as collateral, using the shadow of the money, not the money itself. Notice the pattern. They'll use the shadow of the money, but they fear touching the money itself. Because precedent is power. This is where the fracture in Europe becomes clear. Europe is not one mind. On one side, the security first East, feeling the breath of the Russian military on their necks. On the other side, the finance first West, led by Belgium, where the money actually sits. For Belgium, the issue isn't geopolitics. It's liability. Euroclear is a private financial institution. If it facilitates a seizure later ruled illegal, it faces ruinous lawsuits. Brussels' status as a global financial hub could collapse. So when the US applies pressure, it doesn't pressure a united Europe. It empowers the cautious Europeans, Belgium, Germany, France, who are already nervous. The message to Kyiv's strongest advocates in Europe is brutal. Your immediate survival is less important than our perpetual system. And this, right here, is the masterclass for the global South. For our viewers in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Brazil, this is the playbook of power shown in real time. This isn't just about Ukraine. It's about whether any nation can ever truly save in a system where your savings can be redefined as leverage. Frozen reserves are the modern version of colonial control. Your wealth is safe only while politically obedient. It's part of a wider toolkit: sanctions, swift exclusion, secondary sanctions, asset seizures, the architecture of coercion. Lesson 1. Your security is never their priority. If EU members on Russia's border can have their existential pleas overruled by financial concerns in Washington and Brussels, what hope does your crisis have? Lesson 2. Capital is more sacred than people. The West has shown it will spend Ukrainian lives. It will sanction its own economy. But it will not risk the sanctity of its capital and banking rules. The system's integrity is the ultimate red line. Lesson 3. Your economic sovereignty is an illusion. Your national reserves are held in their banks, in their currencies, under their laws. This episode is a live demonstration that those assets are not truly yours. They are hostages to a system that will protect itself above all else. This is not anti-Western ranting. It is structural analysis. It is the two empires thesis in action. One uses tanks to grab land, the other uses banks to control capital. And right now, the empire of capital is proving it values its own rules more than the survival of a nation it claims to save. So, we are left with the $300 billion paradox. A weapon of unimaginable power, locked in a vault, deemed too dangerous to wield. It tells Ukraine that some lines, financial lines, are harder to cross than the rhetoric suggests. It tells Europe that within our alliance, the keeper of the system holds the ultimate veto. And it tells the watching world, you are not just living in an age of war between nations. You are living in the age of the sovereignty of capital. The empire of finance has spoken, and its message is clear. They would rather manage risk, even if it prolongs pain, than set a precedent that weakens their financial throne. For Ukraine, that means more bloodshed. For the global South, it means a chilling homework assignment. Build your own system, or forever be a guest in someone else's, a guest who can be shown the door at any time. If this dissection of power behind the headlines changed your perspective, you know what to do. Subscribe. Share it. Break the script. This is Liberation Lens. In a world of curated crises, we follow the veto.